Gigi, great to have you with us today.
Thanks. Great being here, Yuval.
Uh, I think that I'll start just to warm up. One of the things that you mentioned in one of your last interviews is that one of your values is love. But you also been in real money gaming. You're investing in defense tech. Can you help me how you connect everything together?
I think that, my wife has this famous saying where she says that it's okay that I deal with all these companies that bring very little value to humanity, everything from SaaS to gaming in her perspective, as long as I take the money and then invest it in things that make humanity better. We're not always at agreement whether what makes humanity better. Like, she's not necessarily thinking that AI is making humanity better. We can talk about that in a second. But I think that over the years I had the privilege of working in many, many, many different fields, and in a way I find that being, interdisciplinary and understanding various business models and various go-to markets essentially makes you a better operator, and then maybe also a better investor over
Mm-hmm.
the years. Uh, Having said all that, I think that there is room in this world to almost everything. Now, there are things that I probably wouldn't do, in terms of my personal guidelines. But I think that, for example, defense today, if you're selling it only to the good guys, does not contradict love. Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be very little room for love if bad people are going to take over the world. I think that gaming is, while maybe not delivering a lot of value to the world, does, present entertainment. And I think that many people may think that Netflix and the game are different things, but at the end of the day, they both provide the same mental break that we need from everything else we have in life. And so I think that, the way I look at it is that I have my red lines. Like, I would not invest in anything that's related to smoking. Again, personal preference and so on. But I'm trying to make sure that whatever I do can eventually, in my world, support the notion of love and of, the kind of existence I want around the world.
But is it something recently that you changed that to be love? Because probably like 20 years ago it was not love, right? One of the values.
I think that
It was about like making money.
I would say you're kind of, you're kind of. This was not the first question I expected, which is great.
No, you've been doing so many interviews. I want to start it with the spicy part. Yeah.
That's very good preparation on your end. I think that, I don't walk around the world and yell that my core value is love. That's not the way it is. But I do think that eventually love, which, we're not talking about romantic love. We're talking about the concept of loving humanity. We're talking about the concept of assuming that humans are good. We're talking about the concept of trying to bring good to the world. We're talking about the power of positive energy. All of these are like
Mm.
put together into the realm of love. I think that that's always been part of who I am. At least I like to think that. And I think that over the last, maybe ever since I was 40, upon that, there's this famous thing that I believe in, that the qualities that make you successful until you're 40 are the ones that are going to be the one that take you down if you don't change them from 40 onwards. And I
Okay.
think that, yeah, and when I think about, competitiveness, when I think about what you're trying to do when
Mm.
you're younger, with your drivers, then I think that, love, as in this wider essence, was there all the time, but it was maybe less felt compared to other things. I was super competitive. I was super, I wanted to achieve tons of things. Uh, and I think that ever since I was 40, and maybe coupled together with some of the successes that I was fortunate enough to have, that helped me push ego down, that helped me, understand what's important for me from here onwards,
Mm.
and that helped me push this value that I call love, but it's positivity, it's positive energy, that helped me make this a stronger core of who I am, and a stronger core of the values by which I try to behave. And I think that, again, I'm not even 100% sure that had I been today an operator, like running a company,
Mhm.
as easy as where I'm sitting today, which is I'm an investor and I help others build their businesses, and and they're the ones that are taking many of the hard decisions, and they're the ones one of the things that that I'm very proud of is that I never I don't get confused. I don't think that just because I'm giving good piece of advice or a few $1,000,000 or whatever, I don't think that that makes the hard work mine. I don't think that it's my company. I don't think that that I'm behind any of this. I'm giving advice that's sometimes good, sometimes bad. I'm giving money that is kind of commoditized, right? Every fund could give you
Yeah.
money. I'm trying to give advice, and I think that for this new role of supporting entrepreneurs in their journey rather than being an entrepreneur, this concept is easier. It was easier for me to bring it forward, and I'm also older, so I had room for that. So I don't run around yelling it, but I'm trying to behave it.
No, I love it. And I think that if we move to the first pillar, which I call the how do you stay relevant with AI, one of the great blog post that you wrote is about the 1000 experiment versus 10 experiments. But I just wanted to take it down to the practical of, like, of course, with AI and agents and so on, you can do so many things, but probably you see some companies doing, I don't know if 1000, they do a few hundreds, or they do you do good job on that, and other companies are not doing so good. So what do you see? So maybe you can start with general what you were writing about, and then practically what do you see that in action that is actually working for them.
I think that the question of staying relevant with AI, has in it a core assumption that AI is going to make us not relevant if we don't change.
Hmm.
Uh, because otherwise you wouldn't ask a question like this. And I think that this is something that we all need to understand, because I think this is, what you bundled into the question is really the core of it. And the core of it is that we're talking about a different type of revolution. It's not like other revolutions that we've had before. And, I love giving the example that what software and compute did for us over the years was to take humans and turn them more and more and more into superhumans. So, let's take an accountant. So, 200 years ago, sat down and wrote things in a notebook, and
Hmm.
then one accountant could handle one tiny department, maybe. And then, we started getting central computing. And so, with mainframes, so they could do more. And then we had private computing. And today, one accountant could handle 500 companies, whatever. But this has been, it seemed like a revolution with central computing, personal computing, mobile computing, internet. But it was essentially a linear progression.
Hmm.
That the last revolution was SaaS, right, for all of us in these
Yeah.
areas. And here we're, for the first time ever, in the stage where suddenly it's not going to be about one accountant doing, instead of 500, 1,000 companies. It's no accountant, or
Hmm.
one accountant handling thousands of agents that are doing millions of companies. And so suddenly it's not about making the human better, it's about replacing the human. That's one thing. And what this does is that it creates a lot of uncertainty for many, many people. And
Yeah, I think that in the last few days we're recording that in mid end of May, and we hear a lot of the companies that are laying off a lot of people. So it's really
yeah,
it's quite scary to be
and it will continue. And the strange thing is that these are companies that are laying off people, but in their intention, it's not to do less because they have less people. It's actually
Hmm.
to do a lot more. And the reason this is now possible is because AI and the latest in AI basically not only replaces humans, but it also replaces how a company works. And so when you have humans running AI, you do not need the same management structure. You do not
Hmm.
need the same complex coordination and bureaucracy between teams and between people. You start looking at everything as a technological problem rather than a human problem. You need people because one person can manage both the AI agent that's writing the product spec, another one that's writing the code, another one that's doing the design, another one that's implementing and testing. Then suddenly you need different kind of people who are very high agency people that can take
Hmm.
responsibility for everything. They need to be pseudo technical. It's not very technical, but need to be to understand and not be afraid of this change. They need to take responsibility way beyond the single streams. They need to take responsibility. And this change, this is what's getting companies to go and say, this is not about cost cutting. This is about changing how we work. And in many cases, what we're seeing is we're seeing cost cutting that is actually not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough because if you're just cutting costs and you're not changing the way you work, then you're not really harnessing this revolution into your business. Now, we need to think about how do you stay relevant as a human? And then we need to think about how do you stay relevant as a company?
Yeah.
Let's start with the easy one, which is as a company. Okay, it's an easier one because there's a playbook already for that that is more or less clear. And the playbook is that you need to a look at your structure and your hierarchies and your org chart and start to understand where you can start
And
removing
yeah.
layers and where instead of having people managing people that manage people, you can start having people that own projects all the way from beginning to end because of
Mhm.
AI. This requires you to choose which one of your people could do that in terms of if they're not just their skills, but actually their characteristics, their character, how they behave.
So tell me a little bit more about what or we can talk about later what they need, because this is probably something that everyone will be interested of, like, what do I need in order for me to be staying in the company, the role?
Let me keep this for a second
Okay.
for the other part, which is the humans. How do you
Yeah.
stay relevant as a human? Okay.
Yeah.
Once you decided what's the target structure that you want to have, and then there will be areas where the target structure is going to look dramatically different than what it is today, like coding, which is going to be super different than every day that changes is going to change even more. Versus, I don't know, enterprise sales, where maybe getting the leads going to be different, and maybe updating the CRM, or maybe how the CRM will look is going to look different. But eventually, for a few years from now, still, the guy you're selling or the girl you're selling into in the large organization, they don't want to talk to a bot. They still
Yeah.
want to talk to a human. They still want to look you in the eyes and see that you're going to work hard for them. And so maybe in the sales department, the lead gen is going to be different. The management is going to be different. The analysis of the call is going to be different. All of that's going to be different, but there will still be a person speaking to a person, maybe. Okay.
Mhm.
Once you've done this analysis of all your various departments, and once you've flattened the organization, the next thing is to check who are the people that are most relevant to take these new roles. And what we're seeing in many companies is that in some cases, the company's culture has brought in people that have the skills to do that. In other cases, it's beyond just reducing headcount. You need to reduce headcount and bring new people that are different because the company's culture wasn't the right culture, or the people that were brought in weren't the right people. Now, once you have that in place, what I wrote about is like the last stage, which is understanding essentially, and it's especially true, of course, for small startups, but it's actually also true as to how each department in every large startup or each unit in every large company should work, which is to understand that from beginning to success, a startup is essentially, or a new product is essentially an iteration machine. An iteration machine, and when you think about, we've all done startups. When you think about it, you try something, it doesn't work. Maybe it works perfectly at the beginning. That usually happens to other people, not to me. You start, and then after you start, you continue with another iteration, and another iteration, and another iteration, and another iteration, and you continuously look at the data and the KPIs so that it gets better and better and better and better until you reach the product market fit that you need and you can scale. This entire process of doing that, this iterative process, is something that is limited eventually by how much money you have and how much time you have. Now, because essentially as a startup, you're limited in time and you're limited in money. Time because money ends, and because competition moves fast, and money because you've raised a certain amount of money. The more iterations you have, it's like having more shots at the goal. The more shots you have, the higher chance you have of succeeding. Now, as startups become faster and faster, they can have more shots at the goal. And so, for example, when the cloud environment arrived, and you could change your product without having to go to your customers and change it on-prem every time, this increased dramatically the number of iterations. And so, basically, what AI is doing, because it allows you to deliver so much faster and to deliver such a crazier number of features and changes in a shorter period of time, you basically need to turn your company from a fast iteration machine to an ultra fast iteration machine. Now, if you do that, then with the same money, be it in a large company or small company, and the same time, you can end up optimizing it better and better and better and better and better up to the point of success. If you're going to be slower than your competitor and they're going to iterate more, then you're going to lose. And it's enough that in every iteration, you add one iteration to a period of a year. If we say that every iteration adds 10%, then every iteration that you add adds another, in a year, adds another 10% of, if you're using AI to make the analysis of every iteration better, and let's say you're increasing this by a few percent, then that compounds over the year. So these are all things that AI enables today, which, by the way, mean eventually working harder and working more, not working less. And you've got to embed that thinking into your new AI organization. So as a company, if you're going to create the right structure and environment, if you're going to choose the right people, if you're going to give them the right tools and ensure that they know how to use it, which is, by the way, is critical, because many companies embed these tools and don't make sure that everybody uses them and don't make sure everybody understands them. But if you do that, and then eventually you're using this to ensure that you have more iteration, then you've increased dramatically your chances of success. I just finished with the company side. And
yeah, so I think that the company side, great. And my question was about can you give me an example of a company, like a startup that you were, investing, mentoring, advising, that really did this shift? So they were, a little bit slow, or didn't do enough experiments, and then they implemented something, and what actually they did.
yeah, I think that it's not necessarily about those that were slow, because they were not slow. They were fast for the previous world.
Yeah.
And they had to shift to be faster. And I have to say that I don't have amazing examples of companies that made that shift yet completely, because these are very painful shifts. I can tell you that I'm super proud, for example, of a company that I invested in many years ago, maybe the first investor, and still very involved, called Moon Active, which is a games company. In the games company, you've got few areas where it's super easy to understand where you need to change: coding and design. Right? Both of these are places where the tools are very apparent. But there's tons of other areas where it's easy to think that you don't need to change. And basically, the CEO of the company around 2 years ago understood the magnitude of the shift that's happening, went on a journey to learn everything he could learn on it, and basically changed the company. There's still a lot to do. There's always still a lot to do, but changed the company dramatically to what is probably, for a company of its size, one of the best AI-driven companies out there today. I would also
What did he do? I know Muli from the time that I was eating lunch, and he would tell me, "Look, at the meeting that I have after you is with Gigi," and back then he was making a few $1,000s in a week. So that's how long I know him. Yeah,
now it's many $1 million in a week,
yeah,
in a week. It's the company is, that's way
yeah, amazing, amazing.
beyond $2 billion.
You
That is very, very true. That is very true. I could tell you a story later on about should investing more in why, how stupid I feel sometimes.
yeah, no, no, no.
Sadly, I never know when I invest that this is going to be the one that's going to be so successful. Like I still haven't managed to do that.
Yeah,
But Mooney is one of these CEOs who really takes nothing for granted. He's still super paranoid, which I think is a super good thing, meaning that the fact that he has a super profitable company that is super successful doesn't let him rest for a second. He always thinks that somebody else is building the company that's going to kill his company. And I think, for me, this realization how critical this is came that there was this very old 60 Minutes with Jeff Bezos, where he was asked, what's the thing that you're scared of the most? And he said, the two kids sitting in the garage and now creating the company that's going to kill Amazon. And there was already, hundreds of billions of dollars. And you could see that he's very serious. And I
mm.
think that, and so, with all the differences, Moody has the same thing. And whenever Moody sees, and there's other CEOs like this, of course, but whenever he sees a major change, a major shift, he really dives all in and turns this into his own thing. And so the first thing is that he didn't put a head of AI, or he didn't put like somebody external to do that. That became his project.
Okay,
Thing is that he started changing the way he works so that he can talk about it as a user and not as somebody that's talking about it. He became the champion of it across the company.
I love it.
He not only implemented tools and spend the money on it and spend the money on training people, but he also measured how much people are actually using it, with an understanding that if you don't, then you end up just putting tool in and never knowing whether people are using them and how much they're using them. He took some risks. So, security might have said this tool exposes some of our data outside. So that's great, but I want us to use this tool. And so it wasn't a single thing, but it was really a plan that, by the way, ended, and I'm not sure that I'm supposed to tell it, but ended with him actually. The presentation to the management about what's going to happen with AI in the company wasn't an expert. It was him giving the presentation because he was the one that took it, learned it, decided with a lot of advice, of course. And I don't know many companies that did the same thing, although I'm sure that Wix and others are all are doing the same thing. So that's one example. I think the other side of the example is that there are companies that actually grew into this new world, and you see the difference. So if we take, just to compare a little bit apples to apples, if we take another games company called Sunflower, which is a super successful company, a bit of a different field, but the company is 3 years old, and revenues and profit more or less like Moon Active. So great results,
Crazy.
amazing in no time. But the company is like 120 people,
Wow.
and this company grew with super young founding team, grew into the world of AI. There isn't anything in this company that was not built. So they didn't need to change anything. They had an advantage because there were no habits to break. The habits
Mm.
were AI habits to start with. Uh, in their particular case, if you think about 3 years, they set up the company exactly 3 years ago. They launched the product after 3 years, a few days before the 7th of October, and they were stuck with almost no employees for a long period of time because everybody was in reserve. So they stayed a very small team. And so the way the founder tells the story is that they had no choice. They had to use AI because there were no employees. And so you see a company it's probably a less complex company than Moon Active that has many divisions, but
Yep.
you see a company and you see how, while Muli needs to really work hard and doing a phenomenal job,
They grew from the AI like as a base for them.
they grew into it. And now companies we're seeing today are even more extreme.
Yeah.
And I think that this is really, a company that starts today, if it's started by the right people who have the right AI experience, this is really the time in which you can build the biggest competitive advantage, the fastest ever. So
So it's exactly, one of the questions that the next one is really is it a good time to build a company? So of course, we say yes because in a small team, we can bring in amazing things. But I feel like
I think it's easy and hard. I think it's
yeah,
I started thinking about I never
starting a new company, Gigi.
no that as well. I started one together with Shtach Schulman a year ago called Line 5, but it's kind of secretive, so I can't tell you a lot about it. It's defense.
Okay.
Uh, but no, I started thinking a while back, why is this such a complex time? It's a complex time because on one hand, you can build a product in no time. On the other hand, all the products today incorporate intelligence into them, and the intelligence is not the IP of the company. So the
Hmm.
intelligence, which is incorporating LLMs into your product, is not necessarily the IP of the product of the company in most cases. The way you look at it, funnily enough, is something like you know, in the past we used to say there's a minimum growth threshold that we care about, and this used to go up. Like if it doesn't grow 3x at the early stage, or 4x, or 5x, then it's not interesting. We're suddenly now in a very strange position where sometimes when it grows too fast, it's also not good. Why? Because if somebody manages to sell $3-4 million in 3 months, what
Hmm.
does it means that all the value comes from the intelligence that he brought from somebody else. Because you can't build in 2 months a product that will reach 4 million in no time,
Mm.
right? For hard. And so on the one hand, it's very easy to scale. On the other hand, it's very difficult to create a competitive moat today. On the third hand, the large labs, they seem to want to take over almost everything around. It is, and when you think today about cyber, could it be that cyber infrastructure is going to look like one instance of an LLM, maybe AGI, sitting within your perimeter and looking at everything and basically writing the code from scratch that's best for you. And every time there's something up that comes up, writes additional code to shut the holes down. And it communicates with other safe AGIs like this to ensure that it learns about every attack that they're experiencing instead of 300 vendors. And, so maybe it's not the time to start a cyber company. But then on the other hand, for a few more years, there's going to be so many new risks from AI. So
Yeah.
maybe it's time to start. So it's super exciting, super complicated, super.
So what would you tell? Because I think that there is something that people repeat that you have to have like domain expertise. You have to get the data that you're gathering is kind of your IP. What do you see now as you have like a early stage founder thinking about something coming to you? Probably it's the same advice that you keep on giving them, but what you will be doing? I don't know. What will be the advice that will not be a cliche in terms of what you're seeing and what you will be willing to invest in. Of course,
So
the team is
yeah, so
amazing team. Yeah,
I'll skip all the usual thing that
yeah,
everybody says over the years. A great team, find the best people, whatever. I think that there's a bunch of things that change. The first thing that changed is that I'm now telling some people that they should think whether their business is venture scale or not venture scale. I think that what AI allows you today is to create a business that could make nice profits
yeah.
without raising a lot of capital and keeping most of the equity for yourself, and then having a great business that's profitable without having to necessarily go the VC route, which is, the classic VC route is, hey, aim for the sky and win or die.
Mm-hmm.
First thing is that I think that we are seeing now, we will see, we're starting to see this flood of what I call micro-entrepreneurship, which is not necessarily micro like a kiosk, but these are companies that could end up making 5 million a year and maybe 2 million profit or maybe 20 a year. And they don't need to explain to you that they can make 2 billion. And because maybe their chance of making 2 billion is very small.
Yeah.
And in the past, if a company is going to make 5 million and 2 million profit, then, it was a kind of an empty group. Why? Because you still needed $5 million or $10 million to get there in terms of
Mm-hmm.
building, marketing it. And so why would you bother? But today, if using AI, you can build it with $10,000 of tokens, and then you can have automatic marketing running for you, like my company Enzo that does growth hacking using AI. That's like, companies are, we've never seen anything that people enjoy so much as their product. And they're like, you take that and you start growth marketing it for very little, and then you take another tool to do your customer support, or you're programming your own, you're prompting your own agent, and suddenly maybe with $500,000 you can create that $5 million business that makes $2 million profit without a VC. And I know that maybe not be good for me, but it's could be perfect for the founders. But that's one.
So this is why you ask them, like, is it like, are you going the VC route? Are you going to go big, or you just want to have like a lifestyle business and do well?
So here's the problem, because even when you say a lifestyle business, it sounds like you're looking down at them.
No, no, no.
I'm not looking down at it. It's not a lifestyle business. I think that there are gazillion businesses. I think that finding today a business that could be 10 billion or 100 billion or whatever is super hard. It's
Yeah.
super hard, super competitive. It's always, but it's even harder now. I think that creating today a business that will sell 5 to 10 million and make, I don't know, $3 or $4 million profit is much easier, much doable. You don't need that much money to start it today, or at least not as much as before. And so many people that went that route of being one of the 200 people that start a company for eventually having one or two that become a multi-billion-dollar company, many of these people could create these other businesses because they're super talented, and because today they don't need to raise 10 million to build it or 20 million to build it, and they could do that. And so that's one thing. That's one new piece of advice that I'm giving. The second thing is that I'm asking them, do you have the right team to actually take advantage of everything we spoke about before?
Yeah.
Because if you're starting a company now, you can't be one that needs to change. You need to be one of those that started into it. You need to be one of those that's hitting the ground running and using everything. I tell them today that my preference for smaller team, I've always had a preference at the beginning for smaller rather than larger teams, but today
Mm-hmm.
my preference like tripled, because I think that smaller team of founder-like people can deliver today dramatically more than a 3-4x size team, at the beginning at least, which are people that are not high agency, that don't have that total ownership and total commitment and the ability to treat everything as a technological problem rather than a human problem.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's, but in the same time, I feel like one of the advice is like be very careful with hiring, but in the same time there is a certain time that they need to hire, and maybe they need to hire this like high caliber people, let's say, when they go to market within the US and so on. So I feel like also there is a lot of stress on the CEOs to say, when I'm
I'm
able
def
to go next.
yeah, I'm definitely not suggesting that an enterprise sales company needs to work only with agents. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that your core assumption should be that other than the very few places, like, you go into a regulatory area, you need to have an head of compliance. Why? Because you need to have one. It's going to take the regulators years to accept that a head of compliance is going to be an agent. Fine. So you've got it's so you need to identify which parts of your business still need human oversight and which parts of the business still need human labor. Once
Yeah,
you do that, it's how you treat all the rest, right? It's like clearly you're not going to try and bang your head on the wall and try to convince the regulator that an agent can do compliance or could do the full compliance job.
yeah.
And so, that's how new companies are set today. And what we're seeing is that the ones that understand this are moving faster than ever before. And the gap between those that know and understand it and those that don't is, it's never been that wide. The gap is just crazy. The founders that are getting it are moving light speed faster than the founders that don't get it. And even in my portfolio, without naming anybody that's not, I still have companies where it feels to me that despite everything I'm saying, that their view is that AI is using Claude to write a bit of code and basically put a copilot in their product, in their SaaS product. And as much as I try to explain to them that this is not enough, some of them are, like many changes, it's just like some on-prem companies didn't want to go to cloud. Like they were like, we've done it for years, it's working, why go to cloud? And this is of course even worse. So this is how this is my
And,
advice.
and, and I think that I wrote to myself that in terms of you are from the gaming industry. I also used to lead the gaming team, so it's all about the metrics and the data. What is currently like the vanity or the specific number in the dashboard, or I don't know, a few numbers that you will ask the founder or you would like to see in terms of the progression of the
In the
company?
in the gaming company or in any.
No, not in the gaming. In general, probably it's depend on the vertical,
Yeah.
but I feel like what are the things that you would like to see in terms of the company growth that you will see, because also that is changing.
Yeah, that really changes across companies, but I think that, we used to have that, we used to have, the SaaS thingy was grow 3x a year if you wanna be top decimal, and if you wanna
Hmm.
get that no longer works. You need more than this if you wanna be a top company. What is it? 5, 4, some would say that, that for top companies, it's gotta be 8 or 9, especially from a low base. But because it is not very easy to compare apples to apples, I look more, I think, at the pace of change and iterations than I
Hmm.
look at the actual revenue growth. Now, of course, I also look at the revenue growth, but when you invest in a company, you see the past, and I want to see the progress in the past, and you see the plans for the future. And you can dive into the pipeline, you can do, but it's super hard to know whether a company a year from now is really going to be 4x or it's going to be just 2.5x or 5x. You look at the pipeline.
Yeah.
So some assumptions on that, but you can see what DNA they created. You can see how fast they're delivering. You can see whether they're pushing new things into their product on a daily basis. You can see whether they're using data that you can use today much better than ever before because it's much easier to analyze, whether they're using data to make decisions. You can see whether the people in the company are the kind of, you know, mission driven, tech focused, AI focused, high agency individuals that you want to see in the company. And so, especially because I invest early stage, these are things that I focus on maybe even more than on the growth metrics.
And I think that coming back to we discussed about companies and about the human, and specifically about you. How do what are you doing to keep up to date in terms of, like, you told me that you have this project for health. What else are you doing? But this is most mostly about your, your personal things, but how do you use it yourself? And I think that the follow up is like, what as a person, that work in anything that they do on the daily basis, what they need to do in order for them, yeah, to keep up with everything that is happening in terms of
Excellent.
like keep on learning. Because I feel like for me, it's also like as you said, it's just taking us more time, right? I feel like I'm going to sleep later because of all of that. I'm finishing work and then I'm starting to, to play with all the agents.
Yeah, I think that you're totally right, and I think that part of the thing that I'm doing are basically the things that that everybody should be doing, or everybody that wants to be up to speed should be doing, and then there's tons of other things that I'm not doing because I don't have the time. But at the end of the day, the interesting thing about this AI revolution is that unless you're one of the people actually creating the AI, so
Yeah.
super techies, the revolution is actually one that allows many more people to take part of it than any
Hmm.
revolution before. So, and the reason is that when we're harnessing intelligence for tasks, if we don't need to create the intelligence, basically most of the work we do is the work of explaining to the intelligence what we want. And people don't understand that perfecting your ability to prompt probably properly is becoming one of the most important skills for humans. And when you think about that, also building agents, which sounds like, wow, I don't know how to build agents. It's super, super simple if you
Yeah.
know what you're doing. Okay. And getting agents to do things for you sounds like a crazy thing, but it's super, super simple if you compare it to the complexity of starting to understand how to build a cloud system. One was super technical. If you didn't have the technical basis, my kid, my 15-year-old kid, is now, and for a few friends, he's creating agents for them to do things for them. Why? Because he watched a few YouTube videos that he can do that. And so I think that you need to be up to speed. I think that you need to lose the fear of what it means. You need to keep on top of it, and you need to do it in your own hands. And this is very different than before, because if I told a salesperson in the past, look, we're moving from on-prem to cloud, I think you need to build a few cloud environments so you understand what we're doing.
It's like, forget about this Gigi. Yeah.
But if I tell a salesperson, we're moving to agentic workflows, I want you to just build a few things in Claude Cowork,
Yeah.
or I'm going to give you a hosted OpenClaw, and I want you to connect it to your social, and I want you to instruct it to do a few things so that you see how it works. And if they do this, the fear goes away, the understanding changes immediately, and then you understand that we do not need crazy reskilling here. So the move from being somebody writing code to somebody that uses AI to write code has happened in no time, right? Now, not everybody's the same. There's some people are using it in a dramatically better way, and other people dramatically not as good. But the change happened. In design, it also happened very fast. People are playing with it. It's easy. It's intuitive. In
Yeah.
content writing, it's very intuitive. You tell the LLM what you want to
Yeah.
write, you fix it. This needs to be across everything.
What do you do? What do you do, like on a daily basis to play with it, or not to play with it, to work with it?
Yeah. I think that I now have many automations. Some of them are done with our own instance that we built of an LLM that looks into all of our data,
Hmm.
and I actually prompt whatever I want on it. Like I can say, I'm interested in the trends of startups that are looking at electrical car charging, and I want you to review both externally all the startups that you can find, but also all the startups that we saw over the years, and what did we think about them at the time. And I want an analysis of this market, and I want this presented on a market map. And this is, for example, this is me taking things that used to take hours or days for me, or I would get somebody to help me and do it immediately. That's like one thing. I have today an agent that does a lot of my mail for me. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not yet to the point of having the agent answer and click, but it's preparing a draft.
Draft. Yeah.
And the draft is based on a very long prompt of my analysis of things and my analysis of the email, my analysis of companies and pitches and everything. And similarly, I have agents that are doing things for me on social and agents that are doing things for me on finding content for me. And so none of it is super complex. I mean, none of it is putting me at the 0.1% of anything, but it's definitely getting me to be on top.
But you're in the 1%. We're only in the 1%, or the 5%. Yeah.
I think we are in the one. We're definitely, the Israeli tech ecosystem is probably second only to the Silicon Valley tech ecosystem. And while we may be here, generally like a couple of months late compared to what's happening in Silicon Valley, we're definitely in the, in the forward bunch. I'm trying to be at the forward of the forward. I read a lot. I get lots of updates from people. I follow, the people that I think that are at the edge of it, at the edge of it. But I also have the benefit that when you're involved in many companies, everybody brings some innovation. Everybody
Yeah.
brings new knowledge, and I can collect whatever I want from it. So,
You
I
learn.
found I sound really smart, but I'm actually learning from them.
Yeah. I feel like this is the same thing for me. I speak with so many founders, and they are building. I just spoke with a crazy company that they working on building robotics to create materials and specifically magnets. I
Yeah,
was like, wow. I feel like, and they all of them are ex isomorphic labs, and anyway, so yeah, crazy
yeah.
crazy things being built
But
now.
I will say one important thing. I think that if anybody's listening and they fear that the world is leaving them behind and that the AI is taking everything, I'm not here to suggest that 10 years from now, we're not going to face potentially a major employment crisis or, that I'm not talking about this, but for the coming 10 years, the people that are going to know how to harness this are going to have many more jobs than they have today. And
Okay.
you look at AI implementation, you need FDs, forward deployed engineers, but they're not really engineers. They're prompt engineers. They're people that understand what the customer is trying to do. They understand how to configure the system which is the AI agent that's supposed to do it for them. And it needs to know how to tweak it and optimize it to do the job. Every programmer could become one of these. Every project manager could become one of these. Many product people could become. There's so many things. And so, my and I for me, by the way,
No, it's important, Gigi, because I feel like more and more people are not optimistic. I think that it's also good to hear again for the next 10 years. But yeah, so it's just to try and not to be afraid of that. And as you said, it's quite easy because I think that the best thing that people told me is like, just ask Gemini, ask Claude. He will tell you step by step. And if it's too complicated, just tell it simplify that. I don't understand, and then
exactly.
it will just
You're totally right. And I think that we can't have people giving up because it all looks, very gloomy. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, later on, who knows how the world's gonna look, but we've said this so many times on so many technologies, right?
yeah,
And right now, with AI, we're going to change, we're gonna take away things that people don't like doing, and they're gonna be automated. We're gonna discover drugs faster. We're gonna discover new materials faster. We're gonna reduce costs of everything. There's so many things, and all these things will need people that can work with the AI and can use the AI. And so I think that, yeah, we definitely need to think as humanity about the impact of AI going forward. Like, are we all going to be, stupid people that all want, we only want bread and entertainment and AI does everything? The big discussion that the world should be thinking about. But for now, for the coming few years, if you're feeling that you're left behind, even if you feel that you're old and you're left behind, make the push to get on this AI train because it's not as hard as it seems. I'm
hmm
not talking about becoming a programmer in Anthropic.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Alright, that's hard. But to get on the AI train and be the person that can help automate that stupid workflow in the bank that hasn't been automated for ages, or to be the person that can help a restaurant work better so that the margins are finally okay, or to be the person that, or any other thing, these are not that hard. And if you put the effort, and by the way, my push for the state of Israel, which is we have the advantage of having a relatively technological workforce and a small country, so we don't need to train hundreds of millions of people. And if
yeah.
we move fast and we train lots of people, like the people that are leaving some of the large companies today, then we can have a head start on this. And we could be the ones that are providing these. And, in the future, Israel can be not just the state of development centers where people write code. It could be the state of many other functions that could be automated with AI if we're the ones that are doing it better. So,
Yeah.
think about it that instead of a development center, we're also going to have here the central place in the world for doing design with AI.
Mm.
We have people, not everybody. Maybe we could take 5,000 people, and they could be experts in making the most out of AI design and similar other things. And so I think there is a huge opportunity both for individuals and definitely for companies, but also for countries if you take it correctly, alongside significant risks and doubts that people have. But as an investor, I'm always choosing to be optimistic, because otherwise,
All investors and also, as founders, and yeah, we have to be optimistic. So just a last couple of questions. One thing is more about the resilience part. I talk about what is the one habit you protect no matter how crazy things get in your life. This is the one habit that you keep that you can share.
wow, I think I have a few.
Even like, what are the three habits that you keep?
I think I have a few. The first one is
Go to sleep in the same time as Whoop tell us.
not in the same time, but it's hours.
Hey, right. Yeah.
It's hours of sleep. I really, 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 really try to get around my 7 hours, which is very different than what I was before, because earlier on when I was younger, 4.5 hours looked great for me, and I thought that's enough. And today I know that was also a mistake, I think.
Yeah.
So 7 hours I'm trying to keep. That's one thing. I would at the minimum sport twice a week at the minimum, and I try to do something every day, even if it's like 30 minutes, even if it's like a walk. But I would try to do 30 minutes. I think it keeps my mind clearer, and it helps me de-stress, and it helps me when the going gets tougher. I try to meditate more. I can't say that I meditate enough every day, but actually, the more the pressure that rises, the more I'm trying to meditate. Uh,
You do it with a nap, or like Calm, or something like that, or just by yourself?
no, but I'm using a Muse device. That's my personal hack for
Yeah.
it's a brain.
Yeah.
It measures your brain waves, and
Yeah.
it gives you biofeedback that helps you get into meditation quickly.
Okay. Yes,
Into
I
meditative
know.
state. I love.
Okay.
And then the last thing, me personally, I also I'm a big fan of dancing and electronic music. So whenever things get really hard, I'm trying to find a good party.
I'll see you on the speakers.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you on the speakers or next to the speakers?
My age, probably under the speakers, but yeah.
But you used to be in the speakers. Amazing. So we'll do just the last question that I have is, everything that we talked about. What is the one concrete thing a founder starting can start doing this week? Again, we don't know in which stage he is, but he's very early. But in stage of like, what can they do together with his team and so on this week to get to the next level and improve things?
I think I would, for any company, I would take now a day off, at least one, and I would run an offsite discussion with my partners, with my co-founders, and with my management, asking the question: are we best in class in our structure, in our use of AI, and what are we not doing because it's easier to not do? Because I think that this is very hard to do in your everyday. You come to the office, there's this problem and that problem, everything jumping on you, and you need to stop. You literally need to stop every few weeks and ask yourself, am I still best in class? Because the pace of changes has never been so fast. The pace of change is crazy. And if you don't ensure that you have the right structure, the right people, the right tools, then you're just losing the speed, and you're losing the iterations, and you end up losing your market position. So that's the one thing.
Okay, so just take the time and really, look into this, because otherwise you just keep on running and keep on doing, so many things, and just like other things happen. Amazing. Thank you, Gigi, for a super interesting conversation. And I'm going to make sure that I would increase my sleep from 6 hours to 7 hours in June.
Okay. Report over. Say,
Okay,
say
I will definitely. Thank you.